Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the HR Tech Chat video podcast. And with me today, I have very special guest, Steve Goldberg, who is a longtime HR industry analyst, advisor, and thought leader. Welcome, Steve.
Rand, thanks a lot. Great to be with you as always.
Oh, yeah. The feeling is mutual. Sort of sitting here in rarefied air, I feel. I'm very happy to have you on the podcast. And we have some really interesting, we've had all sorts of interesting conversations, the two of us, sort of offline over the past many months, especially. But we landed on something that you shared with me was very important to you, and I think it's a really especially interesting topic. And what we're calling it here is 5 opportunities where HR technology can make a difference today and over the next several years. Maybe before we hit on that, just that's to whet the appetite of our viewers. Maybe you could just give us a little bit of background about yourself. It's really fascinating, and you have just a wealth of expertise to share.
Yeah, thanks, Brent, and thanks for having me. So I like to say what makes me unique, other than my personality, is, and it's not that I've been in HR, HCM, and HR tech for about 4 decades now, but it's really the diverse set of lenses that I'm able to bring when I talk to customers and clients, either on the vendor side or the buyer side. And really, the diverse set of lenses is rooted in the fact that I spent 15 years heading up HR systems for financial services, more specifically investment banks in the US and in Europe. And the CHROs that I reported to really at a young and tender age, right out of grad school, a master's in HR. Not that I really applied anything from back then, but the credential, I guess, helped me in terms of getting relatively senior jobs at a young age, particularly in investment banks. In any event, the CHROs that I reported to felt very strongly that I needed to immerse myself in pretty much every HR process, and so then I could properly have the foresight and be able to manage risks and opportunities as it relates to, then deploying technology to automate and enable those processes, and work closely with my teams, and kind of we could all learn together. So they were really great experiences. I did this at Kidder Peabody, Payne Weber, Salomon Brothers, and in Europe at Swiss Bank Corporation. So 15 years of that then led me to take the reins of heading up strategy at PeopleSoft. When I crossed over to the vendor side, and then did something entrepreneurial after that, and co-founded an applicant tracking software company. And really, for the last 15 years, or else it would take much too long to give you the details of 40 years. But really, for the last 15 years, I've been mostly serving as an industry analyst and advisor. I was an analyst at Burson and Associates, wound up giving the keynote at Burson Impact 11 years ago. And more recently, relatively speaking, I was the HCM practice leader at Ventana Research for the last 4.5 years. So I'm on my own now, and because of my age and stage, I'm going to probably not be an employee anywhere else, but I'm having a blast, and I'm having a pretty robust year. The relationship I have with 360 Insights is one of those relationships I truly value, and it's, just having a good time.
Fantastic. And we value the relationship with you as well. And I'm just struck by, all the different perspectives that you're able to bring to your view on HR technology, the HCM industry, and all of that. And I think it's incredibly useful and important. So you bring a really unique voice. Getting to the topic that we're talking about today, and forgive me if I stole your thunder, I just couldn't wait to share it. But 5 opportunities, again, 5 opportunities where HR technology can make a difference today and in the future, the coming years. What are some of want to get to the 5 of them. But if you were to kind of sew it all up in sort of a overarching statement, what is some of your thinking here?
Yeah, thanks. The first one I'll mention is not, yeah, I guess it is one of the 5, but more broadly speaking, it's a thought I've had for a long time now, because it's really the byproduct of mashing together the vendor perspective and the customer perspective. And what I'm referring to here is, the vendor perspective is, yes, we want to serve our customers, we want to address market needs and opportunities, but we also want to be profitable. And to be profitable as a product company, you better be productizing as much as possible, because you can't have kind of these one-off rogue products, and it's just too darn expensive to support the infrastructure around rogue products. So productization is one of the hallmarks, let's say, of the vendor world. And then when you look at the customer world, it doesn't fit neatly into their mindset. Yes, they understand that certain of their processes are going to be standardized, but they also, most customers think that they have these nuances and these idiosyncratic requirements, and a very standardized product, that's kind of like, the common elements in what most organizations do for recruiting, for performance or learning or time or payroll. But you have customers that are saying, yeah, we do a lot of those standardized things and common common requirements, but we also have those that are unique. And that's where the gaps usually are, between productization and unique requirements. And so that is an area that I have now started to think about differently. I'm now thinking about it in the context of, can machine learning help? And so that's one of the things I wanted to talk to you about today. How do you bridge that gap with machine learning? Because machine learning can, in theory, bring to bear best practices, whether it be specific to that customer or in general to the industry. This is how those gaps are bridged. So we need to try to serve both masters, serve both agendas, the customer and the vendor. So that's one area. And another one that I think about is what I call line manager enablement. It's a phrase that I started using when I was at PeopleSoft. Why did I focus on it so much? And I'm surprised, even fast forward to today, it's not getting anything close to the attention I think it needs. Yes, it's bandied about, not necessarily with those words, but we got to focus on line managers. It's a very important stakeholder group. Yes, but why is it important? It's important because the HR department typically only comprises about 1% of the organization. How can you possibly scale and have a finger on the pulse of the needs, interests, and goals and potential and issues and challenges of every employee in an organization, every worker, when you're 1% of the organization? So line managers have to be viewed as a critical way to listen to employees, to listen to the needs, interests, and goals, and balance them with the needs, interests, and goals of the enterprise. So whether it be in the context of change management or a steady state kind of operating environment, line managers need help, and that recognition, I think, is increasing out there. And I think technology providers and product companies are thinking about, how can we help line managers allow organizations to be more agile, whether it be, again, kind of in a highly fluid situation or a steady state situation. So line manager enablement is another one.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, there's more, but
Yeah, I
I'm
have.
not kind of giving you the summary level, but I'll let you speak. Sorry.
Well, now that we're into it, this is super interesting, and let's just keep going. But I have one question here, or an observation, because line manager enablement is super interesting to me, and I share your puzzlement over why it hasn't kind of taken off more. It occurs to me that a lot of HCM technology isn't necessarily, best left solely in the hands of the HR department. Not because the HR department, I mean, the HR department is obviously capable. It's just that, like you said, they typically are 1% of the organization, maybe even less. It's around that, right? You can't scale, as much as you want, you can't scale to really be there everywhere the employee experience is happening. And that's that. I guess that's the other piece, is that we've had
Yes.
the emergence of the employee experience taking on so much importance in the past couple of years, in the wake of this pandemic, especially, but it was brewing beforehand, right? Big time. The employee experience, the line manager is much more closer to all the other employees' experience than the HR person is. And we've seen, you mentioned some, technology that might be emerging that could help to empower the line manager. Well, we've seen it, and you have too, obviously. And I think it may come down to analytics, and I've seen, I have seen products launched in the past year or so where they kind of combine people data with operational data, which isn't not which is not people data, but the point being is that it is to deliver very pertinent information to the people closest to that
Yes.
employee experience.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I totally agree, Brent. What we've heard, new terms used really in the last couple of years, and probably ushered in by the COVID era. Yeah, the word empathy has been used in the past. Phrases like listening more to employees have been used in the past, but boy, they really come to the fore. And so, if you really think about it in a real practical way, whether it be through exit interviews or Glassdoor reviews, or the fact that you are, as an organization, not having a lot of success in terms of recruiting the best talent in the industry. It could be all kinds of signs. Could be your standard dashboards, could be surveys, could be sentiment analysis that's picking up on words and themes in anonymized emails and discussion boards. But whatever it might be, the key is it's a twofold dynamic. You have the cues and the signals wherever they're coming from, and then what do you do about it? And then what do you do about it is what we're talking about here. The HR department cannot scale to systematically be everywhere, particularly in a global organization at the same time. So the line managers have to be really in the middle of what do we do about it? What do we do about the fact that engagement is going in the wrong way, retention is going in the wrong way, that we introduced a new benefit plan and now people are leaving in droves. So yeah, I mean, a lot of this, you have the all encircles the employee experience theme, but I think these are really important, and I think the more product organizations start to think in these terms, I think we'll all be better served.
Yeah, I have to agree. And HR can be, in those types of situations, HR can be, the mentor or the coach for the line manager with, that expertise and what you should do next and these sorts of things, helping. Yeah, there's a lot of fertile ground there. We have three more to get through here, though, so I want to make sure that we keep moving here, because I'm looking forward to what they are.
Sure. Yeah. So this one has a tie-in with line managers, and because it would take me too long to get into, to get too granular about my background, because I've been doing it so long. But I also had an opportunity to work for Wayne Huizenga, the late Wayne Huizenga, who in the history of America, or the annals of American business. I think he's the only one that founded 3 Fortune 500s, Blockbuster, Waste Management, and AutoNation. But he actually acquired over 500 companies. And in the year and a half that I was head of HR M&A in the HR department, I learned an awful lot. And one of the things I learned is that there was notes, and we're talking about the 2 years right before I joined PeopleSoft. So yes, it's a long time ago, but I've been a student of M&A and the people aspects of M&A ever since. And one of the reasons why is because I try to be an advocate on behalf of customers and buyers, try to get more technology to help in the realm of again, the people aspects of mergers and acquisitions. Mm-hmm. So, you could think of any kind of moment that matters in the, for the enterprise. And so it could be an M&A, business integration side of the M&A, or it could be a corporate restructuring or going into a new line of business or what have you. But change management is the horizontal and the common thread that cuts across all of it. And I don't believe the words change management and the words HR technology have too often been found in the same sentence. With the exception of where we only got new HR technology, isn't there some change management we have to do to try to raise elevate our chances of being successful? I'm not talking about that relationship between tech and change management. I'm talking about actually using tech to help in a change management program or exercise. And so we know that you have big boulders within a change management lifecycle, like at the front end, assessing organizational readiness. And then you have, and you have skills and competencies and attitude and all of that. And then you have boulders around communications, and you have guidance that line managers need when invariably their team members come to them and say, I don't see my role being that important in the new regime, or there's redundancy and there's likely going to be layoffs, and should I be looking? What kind of guidance can you give me? A lot of line managers haven't been through that. They're not experienced in that situation. And those are pivotal moments. Every one of those interactions, particularly if it's a key employee or even an employee that's well-connected or kind of a brand ambassador, those are all critical. And I think HR technology can play a much bigger role relative to that front end of assessing readiness, and also all the way through of assessing risks, retention risks, risk of engagement, employee engagement and productivity waning, and just the guidance around communications and personalizing those communications. I think it's fertile ground, and that's an understatement, to be honest.
Yeah, one thing that came to mind with the example you shared of the employee seeing their role and thinking, well, gosh, I might be redundant here. Should I, those kinds of tough conversations. And it made me think this is parallel. It's not exactly what would necessarily be used, but I think of, the kind of technologies now that that facilitate and support continuous performance management, which is I've seen called enablement instead. These sorts of things where maybe you have so like a tangible example of a technology, a new sort of modern progressive technology for people performance, being used as or even a Slack or something like that, right? Something less specific with its application, right? Being a way to kind of provide conduits for those conversations, for the conversations to happen.
Totally. And the notion of kind of codifying best practices. What do you do in these high risk situations? I mean, to me, that's one of the best times you want to start, having a repository of best practices that you can that you can access is high risk situations, whether it be your own personal life or certainly in the life of an organization. And again, those major periods of change are high risk. I mean, if you just look at the research out there, really the last 30 years of research, most of these moments that matter for the enterprise either underperform or fail. It's been as high as 70% of major M&As underperforming or failing. If you go down to like corporate restructurings, going into a new line of business, it might be more like 30 to 50% underperforming or failing. But boy, like I said, and even if you have one line manager that has cracked the code and figured out, here's what they're going to say to employees that come to them with very specific questions that they don't have an answer to. They don't have an answer to whether or not their job is going to be redundant. And one of the things that I learned kind of in real time was, and this was back when Simon and Schuster acquired Macmillan Publishing, and I was part of that. I was a consultant to Simon and Schuster, to the head of HR, Simon and Schuster, and basically what he advised me to do was just let people know the date at which the plan will be communicated, or different milestones of the plan, as opposed to saying we haven't figured it out yet. And just that little bit of transparency and communication goes such a long way in terms of building trust and calming people down, or a more kind of highfalutin way to say it is kind of compressing that period of destabilization when people are very distracted.
Yeah. I like the highfalutin way of putting it. I like that. I know we got two more to get through, but just one more observation. It's just super interesting to me. It's going to sound like it's coming out of left field, but over the weekend I was watching a YouTube video while I was washing dishes on my smartphone, perched upon the windowsill in front of me, and it was about 3 Mile Island, the old nuclear plant accident way back in '79.
I went to school in Buffalo.
Oh, you did? Oh, wow. Yeah. I've driven through there a couple of times. Yeah. So they were talking about how the actual accident, after the initial sort of lack of knowledge of what had happened, they actually relatively quickly figured out that it wasn't good, but it wasn't going to be that bad, and that it was all going to be contained, and there would be very little radiation. I won't go into all the details, but suffice it to say that all of the fear and all that took place or occurred or played out because of the poor communication by the spokespeople. And they were it was a very analogous thing to just saying when the next update will come versus kind of saying I don't know. And somebody at one point said I don't know, and it was regarding how much or why should I have to know about that around some sort of radiation possibly emitting. And that's when so whether it's in business or M&As or a nuclear power plant accident, right? If there's some best practices to do here.
And they're not rocket science, I mean, who's not going to shake their head affirmatively when you say, boy, say that makes sense. And yet there's some of the most kind of basic common sense ways of dealing with challenging situations evade us as organizations. And maybe this little talk we're doing today will help a couple of them out there.
Yeah, hopefully we'll move the needle.
I don't know how much time we allot for this. This is the first one I'm doing with you. Do you want me to move on?
Let's keep going. We have more time. Yeah. I want to get through all 5. Yeah.
Sure. I lost count of how many we've done.
That was the third one, I think.
What's that?
That was the third one, I think.
Okay, good. Don't ask me to recap the 3. So let's see. The fourth one I would say is the P word, P for planning. So, of course, there's different pillars that relate to that P word. And, it could be workforce planning. It could be strategic workforce planning, where there's more kind of cross-domain linkages, cross-functional linkages linking the HR planning with business planning. That's when you get into the realm of strategic workforce planning, but also compensation planning. So one of the things I had to do, which was really, I have to say, where the action was in HR in investment banks, was I managed the bonus process. And when you manage the bonus process for investment banks, and I wasn't the head of comp, I was the head of HR systems, but believe me, the investments in HR systems was almost entirely justified in those organizations by getting through the bonus process unscathed.
Can imagine.
So I learned a lot. I mean, I went through this at 4 different investment banks, and and one of the things I learned was, commercial off-the-shelf HR systems really were not designed to do some of the things we had to do. And even if you fast forward to today, I would say you have to look. They're out there, but you have to look for some of the capabilities I'm about to articulate. One is, the ability to, with some nimbleness, if that's a word, be able to define pools that you're going to place employees into, and then allocate a percentage of the pool to them. It might be a salary increase pool, might be a variable comp pool, equity pool, bonus pool. And those pools are a bit more complicated than senior executives, mid-level executives, professionals, and non-execs. It's more complicated than that because you have to account for employees that you want to invest in. So it's going to be high potentials. It's going to be employees that have the types of skills that are the future of the company, and so forth. So a lot of thought has to go into creating the pools, figuring out how much you're going to allocate in the aggregate to those pools, particularly when in an environment like financial services, perhaps 20% of the total spend is already guaranteed, much of it to executives. Or people that have targets and they're not going to make their targets. So there's a lot of, because you're taking from Peter to pay Paul or Mary to pay Sue. So, so you have that aspect, the front end of compensation planning. You have some of those nuances around strategic workforce planning. You have, and last one I'll mention is, succession planning. Why is it that it's hard to find even one of the major HR tech providers giving you capabilities right out of the box that allow you to combine recruiting or elements of recruiting with succession planning. Specifically, you have a successor candidates from inside. Well, how about we interviewed a couple of senior level candidates, potential candidates for the CFO, CTO role, that are not ready to make a move now. We don't have anybody ready to make to be promoted now to that C level inside, but we got to keep that candidate warm. We got to do candidate relationship management and combine the view of external candidates with the view of internals. So bottom line is in my opinion, a ton of opportunity in planning and all the pillars that planning breaks out into. A ton of opportunity for HR tech.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, the planning aspect and having that sophistication of capability in the areas that you kind of highlighted there. One thing that comes to mind with you mentioned pools, whether they be, variable comp pools and salary pools and whatever, right? But also the organization understanding, who inside their internal workforce, that says redundancy, excuse me, they're in their workforce on their team already, right? Who has the skills that they're going to need that the organization will need in the near and maybe midterm future, right? And you see a lot of these all roads lead back to AI as a term I like to say sometimes these days, but you see some of these self-evolving AI fueled skills ontologies. And to me, this is really pay dirt for a lot of organizations that are going to be able to do a lot of the stuff that you just described, which is so important.
Yeah, I totally agree. Ontologies, I'm big on those adjacencies and skills equivalencies. Yeah, it reminds me of one other thing. In this period of a lot of change, I call it max fluidity. Uh, was there something called max headroom for some reason? I
I
don't remember.
remember Max Headroom. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, I don't know why I remembered that, but max fluidity, and the period. It's also a period of a lot more uncertainty in so many ways. You don't know who's coming to work the next day, or who's going to decide to go and be their own boss and architect their own lives. So what does that mean? I mean, so we have to, within that sort of unpredictable, highly fluid operating environment, things like business plans change, business priorities change. The quarter was, we blew it out or we didn't do as well. And then there's a cascading set of effects. Certain skills become more important, certain skills become less important. That impacts who and how we're going to recruit. Where do we get the people that have that skill that all of a sudden became more important? This all really relates to planning. Maybe I'm overdoing it in terms of connecting planning with all of this, but I think it's just not linear and it's not overly concrete and it's not a well-defined process. And maybe that ties back to the very first one I talked about, non-standard processes.
Yeah. Oh no, that's a great insight. I think you're absolutely correct. Yeah, and we could talk about this a lot. I'm looking at the time and we have one more to get through, and I want to make sure we get to it.
Yeah, thanks. So I appreciate that. One of the frameworks you mentioned, one of my hats I wear even as an independent, that's in theory trying to scale back a little bit. One of the hats I wear as an analyst, and I kind of got this from really having the good fortune of being able to work with Josh Burson and some other great analysts 10, 11 years ago at Burson and Associates. And one of the things I learned from Josh is frameworks. The magical word is frameworks. Because, you're introducing new concepts, it's really good. The frameworks are the best way to get people to relate to these concepts that maybe they haven't been introduced to. And so one of the frameworks that I've created in recent years was the AI and HCM framework. And it has 5 kind of categories of use cases. And I'm going to get to one that I think is a golden opportunity that's not getting as much investment as maybe it should. But my 5 categories of use cases for AI and HCM are the 3 Ps. Yeah, well, I'm kind of obsessed with the letter P, I guess, lately. But so the 3 Ps are personalize, predict, and prescribe. Personalization may relate to learning, may relate to how you're dealing with candidates, even rewards. Prescribe what should we do given these different options. Predict retention risk, engagement's going to go down, and then the next 2 are understand. Understand why productivity is going down. Understand why people aren't accepting our job offers anymore. And then the last one is the one I want to highlight, and it's curate. Curate, I put it in the context of any resources that will help me be more productive in my job. So obviously that could be kind of learning content that's ideally kind of served up to me in a personalized way, the medium that I want to use, the pace of learning, et cetera. But how about mentors and coaches and resources that, courses I could take outside the organization? I think that there's a huge opportunity, and it doesn't seem like there's a lot of algorithms that are needed for this. It's just a matter of what are the needs, what's the ask, and have the technology kind of go out and scour internally and externally what are the best resources, whether they are people resources, content resources, or what have you. What do you think of that one?
I think that's a good one, and you know what I like. What's particularly interesting is I think you're right that we don't necessarily need very sophisticated algorithms for this necessarily. Yeah, and that's so. What's stopping us? I use the royal us as applications.
I don't know. There's a lot of priorities, and there's been a lot of applications of technology in the HCM, HRH, XM world already. And it's one of these things where it's almost circular. You roll out solutions to problems which are never perfect, in any aspect of life, as we know, but in the world of HR tech, 20, 30 years of rolling out solutions. And as organizations and customer and users are using them, they find the gaps, they find more ways that they can apply if only there were these new features and functionalities. And so that's kind of the footprint that's good and bad. We're covering more ground with HR technology, but the more ground we cover, it's giving people ideas, and the ideas they're getting and going back and lobbying vendors with relate to the existing applications, extending them, expanding them, filling in gaps. It doesn't necessarily relate to the new frontiers that we're talking about, because the context isn't necessarily there, and there's enough to concentrate on with what's already there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. There's not enough, mind space
Yes.
for them to fathom it necessarily. Point it out to them, and they may indeed think, oh, right, yeah, we should be thinking about that. Maybe we'll move the needle a little bit for a few people with this podcast in that regard as well.
That'll be great.
Yeah.
I hope we covered 5. I lost track, but I always enjoy speaking with you, Brent, whether it's recorded for eternity or not.
This is this one is recorded for eternity, and this was a fantastic podcast. So thank you so much for sharing all your knowledge, and it was 5. I kept track. I don't know how I did, but somehow I did, and it was 5, and so much information, so useful to our viewers. Really looking forward to making this one live, which will be soon. And thanks so much for joining us, Steve.
Thanks for having me. Take care, everybody. Thanks for listening. Take care now.
Absolutely. Take care. Bye-bye.